Hello and welcome to the second segment of a three-part webinar, Meal Planning for Dinner, presented by Tammy Jones and Michelle Treber. I truly believe you will find this informative and well worth your viewing time, so stay tuned.
Everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar of meal planning for dinner. My name is Tammy Jones.
And I'm Michelle Treber.
Michelle and I work for OSU Extension, and if you're not familiar with the Extension, just a little bit of background. OSU Extension has offices in every county in the state of Ohio, and we represent Pike County and Pickaway County, and we are family and consumer science educators in those county offices. And in our offices, we also have other educators that deal with 4-H, youth and development, community development, as well as ag and natural resources. So no matter where you are in the state of Ohio, there is a OSU Extension office, and the resources, whether they be through our counties or other counties, are accessible to anyone in the state, and especially to OSU. So again, as Ali mentioned earlier, we will be using the chat box for any questions you have and some responses, because we want to make this as useful to you as we can and provide you as much information. So we will be taking some poll questions from you. So we're going to start with the first one. And I'd like to ask those with us today, share with us in the chat box, if you would, how many nights you prepare dinner at home currently. If you would just share with us. I see 5. Awesome, Jessica. Lots of 5s, 2s, 4s, 7. Way to go, guys. That is awesome.
That's great. Yes, that's wonderful.
Well, that is great to hear. So hopefully we will provide you with additional resources today that can maybe even make that easier and quicker for you in the prep that you are already doing. And we are so excited that you decided to join us. And it sounds like we have a great group of meal planners and preppers already with us.
Okay, so what are some of the benefits of meal planning? It can save you money, time, can offer healthier choices, can reduce stress for you, your partner, your spouse, and your kids. And how does that reduce stress? If you've taken some time to plan, then it could be easier for you to get those meals ready to go. And you're also probably not running through a drive-through to pick up food. So how can it help you? Gosh, you guys are very experienced with this, and we're going to talk a little bit today about cooking once and serving twice. So we have some recipes in our resources that can help you. Let's say that you cook chicken and you can make 2 meals out of that. We have the Fiesta Skillet Dinner and Chicken Soup with Vegetable recipe. We have, if you used ground turkey or beef, you can make Sloppy Joes, or you could also make a Mexican dish the next night. We have grilled chicken. You could fix that one night and then have chicken pot pie or enchiladas the next night. We also have vegetarian chili recipe for you. You could serve that on salad greens for the second night. You could also add salsa and cheese to make a nice meal out of that. And I like to fill baked potatoes with a protein such as chicken that I've grilled, broccoli, maybe a little bit of cheese on top. So let's plan dinner. So first suggestion is for you to explore the food that you have on hand. What do you have in your freezer or refrigerator that you can start your planning with? So select your protein, and we're going to talk quite a bit about protein today. Find recipes, make your grocery list. Some of you are very experienced, but if you're not, if this is a new concept to you, we suggest that you start with 2 to 3 meals and find success with that, probably 2 to 4 meals, and go with that. You want to also, of course, you're going to consider your family and their acceptance of recipes.
Okay, so what we have here is a tool that we have designed to assist you in your meal planning. Some of you may currently use some type of tool online, maybe even an app that you use. But this is in the files that you can download and actually have a copy of to assist you if this is something you can see that could be helpful to you. So on the left side of this planning tool, you'll see the week, and you can take a quick jot down there of recipes or meals and things you want to fix. And then what we've done on the right side is we've kind of created a grocery list template for you to insert those things that you know you're going to need in order to prepare those all on one sheet. So it allows you to list the days and what you intend, and then after, like Michelle mentioned, checking what you have on hand, whether that be in your cabinets, your refrigerator, or freezer, and then you can create that grocery list of the things you need, and you have all of that in one page. So we hope that you find that tool to be helpful as you move forward in planning for dinner. So as Michelle mentioned, we will be talking quite a bit about protein possibilities. So I want to ask you if you would share with me in the chat, do you find you are eating the same proteins for your meals? Do you typically stick to 1 or 2 proteins? So I see Tracy's yes, Jennifer yes. Lots of yeses, lots of chicken, yes, absolutely. Okay, well, great. Well, we hope to expand and stretch maybe your ideas about proteins and kind of how to mix it up, and maybe that, seeing a lot of yeses, that might be just what you were hoping to get from this today, and I hope that's the case. So when you think about it, Michelle mentioned talking about what your families enjoy and what they like, so you kind of need to take that into consideration too. So we're going to explore the variety of proteins today that are available and different ways you may choose to prepare them. So we're going to go to our live cam as Ali talked about in the beginning, so you can actually see a variety of different ways for chicken, and we're going to talk about chicken and turkey together, but actually what you're going to see on the camera is actually some varieties of chicken. So just a couple choices. So whole chickens, you may choose to roast or bake them, as in the case that you see there in our live video feed. You may choose chicken breast, and that can be baked, that can be grilled, or that can be pan-seared, depending on your liking and the type of recipe that you are using. The canned example that you see there in the video can be added to soups, casseroles, salads, or as a mix-in, really to anything. It's super quick, it's very inexpensive, and it's always on hand and ready to go. Ground chicken or turkey could be a great choice that you could brown that and add into your recipes as well, especially if you're able to get a good buy when it's on sale, buy it in larger quantity. Go ahead and have that browned up and ready to go, that it just needs thawed out and added into your recipes. And of course, there is a large selection of frozen, pre-cooked and uncooked. It comes in breast, whole chicken pieces, diced and stripped. So you can see here in the video that there are the strips. Those are pre-cooked. You just need heated up. They can be cut with scissors or knife into diced chunk pieces if your recipe calls for it. So you've got a wide variety of ways to use that chicken, or in many cases turkey, in order to satisfy the needs of the recipe that you're using and the family's likings to that. Moving on, we're going to talk about a few additional options. So rotisserie chicken. Sometimes we don't think about that, but that one is one of those options that is often reduced at the grocery store, so that you can quickly pick that up and take that home and add that into the recipes, which definitely saves you time and can often save you money. And additional, when we talk about turkey tenderloins, something I really enjoy cooking with is those whole turkey tenderloins that often are already seasoned for you and ready to go. But they're an option that people may not often think of whenever it comes to choices that might be helpful in meal prepping and planning for their week. There's lots of background noise, Patricia's noticed. So that might be me moving my mic. Okay. And can you
Somebody has their microphone open.
Okay, if those of you out there, if you could just check to make sure your mic is muted on your computer, that would be awesome. Yes, Eileen, I see you said same. You're hearing the same thing. Sorry about that. Hopefully that's taken care of now. Okay, moving on. So you got your rotisserie and your turkey tenderloin as additional options to think about when you're talking about time savings as well as money saving. Bear with me just a second. Our slides seem to be frozen. And much better, Elizabeth says. Thank you. So So that's just a quick image there to share what I was referring to when I was talking about the rotisserie and the turkey tenderloins. So let's move on to talk about beef. So when you talk about different cuts of beef, depending on what you like, obviously you've got roast choices, often come in handy when you're slow cooking, especially this time of year for soups and chilies and meals that you might want to have ready when you get home in the evening. You can bake those roasts, you can grill them, and a lot of people even like to use their smokers year-round to do that. When you're thinking about steak, cuts of steak, often grilling or pan-searing, those options. And then you've got your ground beef. Obviously, the leaner the ground beef, the better choice. But browning that and adding it to recipes or having it done ahead, especially when you can buy those larger packs when you find a good buy. And then you've also got your pre-made patties. You can often find those pre-made fresh, which saves you a little bit of time. They're not always the least expensive, but if time is important, then that's usually a good choice for that. And then you can buy those frozen pre-made patties that can go with any sides that you might quickly prepare in the evenings. Moving on, let's talk a little bit about pork. Again, some of the same cuts as our roast, slow cooking that, baking it, grilling it, or smoking it. And then you've also got choice of loin or chops that you might find in pork selections, baking that, pan-searing, or grilling. So I want to take just a second to kind of talk about pan-searing. I'm not sure that a lot of people maybe use that option, but to actually give that a definition, it is a technique that is often used in grilling, baking, braising, roasting, and sautéing. And that is simply when the surface of the food is cooked at a high temp until a brown crust forms over it. It's often used in many recipes, but if it's not something you're currently trying, it is something different that you might give a try. And then you've got your ground pork as well. Again, browning it and adding it to recipes or having it browned ahead can be great time and money savers. So branching out to our seafood items in our proteins, you've got lots of choices here. And this is obviously one of those things that maybe not everyone enjoys eating or even is able to eat. But if it's not something you've tried and you've been wanting to mix things up, fish and scallops are great grilled seafood choices. Again, pan-searing, baking, or broiling those seafood items also can add great additions to many meals and recipes. You've got canned fish when you're making soups, making salads and casseroles, whether it be tuna or salmon, crab, those can often be added in. And then something I enjoy doing is doing a boil with lobster and crab, as well as many vegetables putting in with that. So lots of ideas to stretch. Those were your animal proteins. So now I'm going to switch it back over to Michelle, and she's going to talk to you about your plant proteins.
Okay, so what about plant-based proteins? There are plenty of ways to get protein from plants. Whole grains are a good source, and they also are a complex carbohydrate. So when I talk about whole grains, I'm talking about things such as quinoa, brown rice, barley, bulgur wheat, amaranth, and millet. Also, nuts and nut butters and seeds are high in, can be high in protein, and I'm talking about almonds, cashews, walnuts, pistachios. And the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about beans. And so if you would, in the chat box, what beans do you currently cook with? If you could type your responses for us.
Let's see, lentils, black beans mostly, pinto and black, cannellini.
Great.
All of the ones in the slide. Awesome.
Wonderful.
Kidney, northern, garbanzo. Great.
Okay, that's awesome. So there are different ways that you can obtain your beans, and there are three different ways. So dry beans, which you soak and cook, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment, canned beans, or frozen. And we listed some of the plant proteins right at the bottom of this, and gosh, it sounds like you are experienced with cooking some of those as well. So we should have the webcam coming up in just a moment. Okay, so you see the lentils, those are on the black plate, and the Great Northern beans are on the red plate. And then I also just brought from my cupboard, I brought some refried beans, which are a mashed pinto bean. And I always look to see that some of those cans, they they add lard to them. So I always either select the vegetarian or the fat-free. Then you're not going to have that additional lard added to them. I really don't think you'll notice the difference in that. And that's just one fat that you just don't really need.
Okay, I see a couple things here, Michelle.
Okay.
Patricia's asking, are there any good substitutions for black beans in a recipe? She does not care for them.
You don't care for black beans. I would say you could use a kidney bean or a pinto bean. Those would be ones that I would start with to see if you like those.
Great.
And some people really like to rinse their cans of beans, and I do that. It can help reduce about 25 to 30% of the sodium if you do that. But just rinsing those black beans, it kind of, if you add it to a food, it kind of can turn everything kind of black or purplish. And so sometimes that, people don't like the looks of that as well.
And Patricia clarified she doesn't like any beans, Michelle.
Okay.
But I want to thank Christine because she jumped in and shared with us that red lentils cook faster.
Okay,
and
great.
that might be an option maybe for her.
Yeah, it's a little different texture. I don't know if it's a texture issue for you. A lot of people have issues with the texture of beans, and they may be able to eat a few of them, but they don't like the texture.
And I see Elizabeth is not a bean fan either, so thanks for that support there for Patricia. So tofu, great suggestion,
Yes.
Helen. We appreciate that. And then
Yes.
I see Jennifer has asked, is there a difference between the different colors when it comes to beans? For example, there are green lentils and brown ones.
Golly, that's a good question. I would say their nutritional value is pretty similar, but I could actually get back with you on that just to make sure that it is. Yes, you can stop the video. Yes. So I also had tofu and tempeh listed as a plant protein. And tofu is just such a wonderful food that you can, and it's a soybean, and you can use it, anything that you season it with, it is going to pick up that flavor. It really doesn't have a lot of flavor at all. Well, I'll show you that in just a minute.
And Jean is asking, how does one cope with the gases produced when one eats beans?
Oh.
All right, I'm going to throw this back out there. We've got 56 participants
Okay,
on here.
okay.
So I want to hear what you guys, you have any solutions or any remedies or quick fixes to the gas issue with beans? I see a couple people sharing.
Yeah,
this will be great.
If you start slowly and try
Let
to
her rip, Elizabeth says. Love it. Rinsing them helps. Thank you, Alana.
Yep, and as you build up your body to having more beans in your diet, it does tend to get a little better that way.
So thank you guys for sharing with that, because that is an issue. Beano, but you may have to take them before you eat. And then Larry shares that there are gas pills that you can take prior to eating. Rinsing them, and don't eat dairy at the same time. That's interesting.
Yeah, I haven't
Thank
heard
you
that.
for sharing that. That is an interesting. Eating fresh beans also helps instead of the canned beans. Thank you very much.
So if you haven't cooked the dry beans, there are a couple of methods, but I really like to soak them overnight. So I rinse those and I look through them, make sure there aren't any little pebbles, especially in lentils. Sometimes you'll find a little pebble in the lentils, but I rinse them and soak them overnight, and then you can put them in a crock pot or cook them on top of the stove. I recently made the Great Northern bean soup, and I used some vegetable broth. I added carrots, celery, onions, and 1 potato. And it was really creamy and rich, and a half a 1 pound bag made a full crock pot. And it was like $1.69 for the can of or the dry beans. So really economical, really a great way to make a huge serving of foods. So some other ideas, and you could use, like we said, any bean that you wanted, but black beans kind of lend themselves to some of these recipes, but really they're really pretty flexible. On pintos, I would try pintos or a Great Northern or Navy. So there's a Southwest salad, and I make that quite a bit. I use a mix of field greens on the base, and then I heat up black beans. I may add some seasonings, Southwest seasonings to that, and then while the beans are heating, eating, I pull out some frozen corn, add that and some salsa, and I don't even need dressing on that. And it's really a nice Southwest salad, nice dinner that you can fix.
And thank you, Jean, for sharing. She's letting us know that red beans are milder than the black ones, so if you're looking for kind of that variation to the recipe and to the flavor, that would be a great suggestion.
And then we also have the black beans, the chicken and black bean enchilada, and the fiesta skillet dinner and vegetarian chili. Those recipes are included for you.
So yeah, we would love to hear about if you try any of those, letting us know or getting back with us about that, just to see how those went. Okay, this next slide, I just want you to tell me in the chat box, where have you seen this logo or symbol? I see. Before we go on to that, I see real quick, Helen, I don't want to miss. You say, how long do fresh beans or lentils last after you cook them and put in the fridge?
About 4 days.
And I've started making my own refried beans in my crock pot using dried black beans. Very economical. Thank you, Janet, for sharing that.
That's great.
All right, I see Simon. I like your humor there, Christina. That is what it reminds you of. Alana says every day of the week, other webinars all over. Use this all the time with 4-H and youth, Elizabeth says. Some other places that usually when I'm out doing programming, especially in the schools and the libraries, I get lots of responses like doctor's offices, the school cafeteria, hospitals, emergency rooms, places like that as well. And the idea behind the MyPlate symbol, if you're not familiar with it, it replaces what we formerly use as the food pyramid. But this is I consider this kind of like a stop sign, a universal sign that when we see it, that we should be thinking about our plates. Now, not every day, every plate is going to include all of the food groups, but we ought to be thinking the half fruits and vegetables and including proteins, dairy, and grains in on that plate as well. So it's just a symbol that we kind of want to make sure that people are aware of if you're not aware. So just wanted to kind of throw that in there to show you there. This next slide is a handout that we created. We've used this in different webinars, and you've been provided with this today. This one actually kind of has a circle your favorites idea across there. So taking different days of the week and then searching for different proteins, vegetables, grains, and fruits that you might add in. So if you didn't already have a recipe, this would be helpful to kind of just create things that your family likes, things that you have on hand, things that you have easily accessible to kind of do your own meal combination. Some people are strict recipe followers and others kind of like to play chef and make up their own. So this might be a tool that you might find helpful.
Okay, so what about leftovers? Do you and your family, do you eat leftovers? How could you use leftovers? In the chat box, if you could type some responses there, we will talk to you about those.
I know some people, once they've had something, they don't wish to have it again, and then I know others that don't mind doing that. So Carly says leftovers are wonderful and save time. Absolutely. Next day for lunches, I see.
Great.
Pretty much keep them the way we made them. Also, loving leftovers for lunch. Hubby isn't so fond of it, but it's growing on him. Good for you, Alana.
Good.
Can't live without them. So it sounds to me like our audience, we saw early on that you guys cook several nights a week,
Right.
and then that saves you time and money. It looks like for many lunches. My son eats them for breakfast too. Wow.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful.
That is great. Next day lunch, freeze. There you go. Freeze and have future meals. So maybe you don't have to necessarily have it again that week, but you could have it in a future meal. Ashley says, I try to make enough for dinner for the next day. Sarah says, I'll eat them. My husband won't. That isn't always a happy accident, though. I don't plan for leftovers enough. So that's something to think about, is how could you expand the planning that you do so that it could provide you with more leftovers.
And like somebody asked the question of how long you should keep food. So that if you, let's say you fix soup beans and then you're like, oh gosh, I'm not going to eat that again. Go ahead and freeze that right away. And then it's ready. Then that's a meal you don't have to think about. Just go ahead and serve it. I wouldn't let it sit in your freezer too long. I would go ahead and serve it in the next few months. It'll just have a little better texture for you.
I see Carly says that her husband does not like reheated chicken. Any tips for that?
Oh, wow.
Maybe if he likes spicy or something like that, like adding some additional salsas or seasonings to it to kind of mix it up. Someone also mentioned, what containers do you like best for freezing leftovers?
Well, I like freezer containers, like a small freezer container. That's what I use, just like a plastic container, but make sure that it does say a freezer container.
Freezer storage bags are my go-tos. Even if I have to maybe put in 2 or 3 different to not mix up the items, those just they don't take up a lot of space. I find that they stack very nicely in the freezer and they're easy to take out, and then no dishes.
That's true. That's a plus.
Ryan asks, leftovers tend to give me really bad heartburn, so I typically don't eat them, so that would be a reason not to. Patricia says don't microwave, heat them in a skillet, so definitely changes the flavor on the reheating. Absolutely, great idea. Don't like reheated pork, so put it in a salad. Same with the chicken.
That's a great idea, yes.
Or in the oven as well. And Janice says we eat lots of roasted vegetables. I puree leftover vegetables and put them in chili.
Oh, wow. That's a great idea.
That is a great idea. That would add a lot of flavor to your next batch of chili.
Oh, it sure would. And like when I made that big pot of soup, I had enough to give my sister a couple of servings, another family member a couple of servings. We had dinner a couple of times, and I really still had some left over after that. So think about creative ways that you can share your leftovers. Okay, so we're just about finished. If you could, in the chat box, share one idea that you may have received today from either the chat. We've had a great conversation through the chat today. Something that you plan to try based on this webinar.
So anything you heard that you thought, yeah, I'm going to give that a try.
Or I might try that.
I see Angela says she likes to make pot pies with her leftover chicken and turkey.
That's a great idea.
Great idea. Those all-in-one dishes are great, casseroles and pot pies. Plan more meals with beans. Yes, there is a wide variety out there, and we don't always think of those. Plan to try more plant proteins. Loved all the chicken ideas, Carly says. Thanks, you're welcome. If you provide some recipes, I'm willing to try them. The recipes are actually up in the files, up on the top right of your screen, along with the PowerPoint and the handouts and the grids that we've created. So feel free to download those. Try tofu as a bean substitute. Patricia says she thought she would give it a try. How to keep chicken moist. Definitely depends on the ingredients in that recipe and what you need to do with it. Obviously, if you're just making it ahead, say baking it to use in several dishes, adding a little bit of chicken broth or water in that. A lot of people like to cook in the bags, which keeps your moisture. I know when I do turkey and pork, I don't do it so much with chicken, but I often put them in a cooking bag and keep them moist that way. Laura's going to use more plant proteins. Elaine says to try more of your bean suggestions and make enough for leftovers and freezer meals.
Great.
That's great. I'm glad to see that you've got some takeaways.
That's great. That's
always
wonderful.
Good to have. And again, we appreciate your time in joining us. We do have a list of some resources here.
So everything you want to know about pulses or beans or legumes, go to pulses.org. A lot of recipes we find are in What's Cooking in the Mixing Bowl. That's USDA's recipe finder. Of course, we listed Choose My Plate and Fruit and Veggies More Matters. So we hope you'll check out some of those resources, and we appreciate your attention today.
So there is our contact information. If you have further questions or clarification on anything we talked about. And again, we love to hear from you. If you try any of our recipes, or even if you're just able to do one of the suggestions, we would love to see how it works into your week, saving you time as well as money.